Welcome to the High Performance Interviews. Today I have with me Addison Morris. Welcome, Addison.
Thank you.
Lovely to have you here from Denver in Colorado. And I'm just going to do a real quick introduction for our audience. So, the Women's Cannabis Chamber of Commerce is where we begin. And what does that do? It brings women together to build a national community of women in cannabis careers and businesses to create connections, resources, knowledge, and financial success. And I could go on and share Addison's story, but I'm not the person that is here to tell that. Addison is the person. So I'm going to hand over to you to find out where your story began, Addison, and how you got into the women's empowerment side of things and doing that through cannabis, of all things, I think is wonderful.
Why, thank you so much, Lucy, and thank you for having me on your podcast. I think the women's empowerment, I think for me began extremely early. In 1964, I was 14 years old, and I came to the realization that as a female, I did not actually have the same rights as my male counterparts. I could not buy property or even a car, get a credit card without the signature of a man. And it either had to be a husband or a father, or maybe a brother, And I also came to the realization that I didn't have the same career options. Now, in 1964, here in the United States, there were women who were truly trailblazers, but I didn't know about them, because we were limited in how we received information. We did have a television, but we had like one channel, and it wasn't like a big deal to watch television. And I also, being in the middle of Nebraska, a lot of our education and what we had access for in regards to reading material, that was actually quite limited. So as I started to explore the world a little more through reading, I found more liberal publications. And I also found that the other area where women and children didn't have any rights were in control over what was happening to them. They were oftentimes in physically and emotionally and financially abusive situations with no outs. So that awareness, and then also coming of age in the 60s, where there was a feminist movement, that really was where it started. The empowerment movement happened in the early 80s. And what I came to realize as time went on is we need to move beyond empowerment into positions of power, because you cannot take empowerment to the bank.
I love that. You need to move beyond empowerment to positions of power. Yeah. Okay. So then what did you do when you came to realize that, Addison? What was the thing that you did? What came about at that time? Or was it just something that you thought, that's something that's really important to me and I need to help those people that I'm empowering to move into those positions of power?
Well, I was blessed to grow up in an environment with truly good Christian women. And the Morris family was very active in community service. And I found that when people said, oh, someone should do something about that, I'm going, well, why don't you? So I approached it with the attitude of, well, someone needs to do something about this. So why wouldn't I step up and do something about this? And I think a better way to describe this is I cannot mind my own business, and so because I came of age in the 60s with the feminist movement, I came very involved in the feminist movement. I also learned, when I made this realization, that speaking out just gets you into trouble. Because it was just that time period of the 60s. We were coming out of the 40s and the 50s. And so the attitude towards women, you didn't speak up. Now, I have to say the one thing that really influenced the feminist movement and women's rights that no one really gives enough credit to is the birth control pill, because that made us powerful in a whole different way, because we could control that. So when I came to Denver for college, I arrived in 1968 on my 18th birthday. I immediately came immersed in the movements that were going on at that time, including the feminist movements. And I've always organized women's groups, and I've always been the woman who sat there. And when I look back, I think maybe girl was probably a better term, because coming from Blue Springs, Nebraska, I was still very, very naive. When I would listen to what other women's passions were, it was, well, why can't you do that? So I had always done women's networking events, organized different art openings, luncheons, that type of thing. And interestingly, social media was also a game changer for me. Having always been an entrepreneur and encouraging other women to become entrepreneurs, I saw that as a way to put your business out there and compete with the big guys. But it's just that I was the only one around that knew what social media and Facebook was, because it was so new. So I began teaching classes and seminars on that, which turned out to have that theme of empowering women to open up their businesses, to take control of their lives on a financial level.
What a fascinating time in the world, let alone a time in your life, Addison, with all of that happening. So, those women's group happening, the women's empowerment, the internet and the Facebook and everything coming alive, and you're right at the cusp of that and teaching that. So that's been incredible. And then you've moved on and you've moved into cannabis. So talk about the cannabis side, because I believe that your state was the very first state that it was legalized in. Is that right?
Yes, yes, we were the first state to have, well, we were the first state to have medical marijuana. So that was already available to patients. And then when we were campaigning for adult use cannabis, I don't really think any of us thought it would pass the first time. So that was kind of a shock that I think a lot of people weren't prepared for, because it was just because of the nature of it. I mean, to have anyone over 21 be able to buy pot, I personally didn't think it was going to pass the first time. And what I saw in the cannabis industry is because it was so new that this was our opportunity as women to get in on the ground floor of an industry and create one that was more equal and one that operated by an entirely different business paradigm. Because women get into cannabis with their heart. They come into it oftentimes not because they were consumers, but especially here in Colorado, is we had what we called medical refugees. And these were people primarily with cancer who were given no hope. And again, they weren't necessarily cannabis consumers to begin with. But when you are almost makes me cry to think about it. When you are confronted with you have no hope, you're going to die, you will do almost anything to make yourself better. So we had this influx of people who this was their last chance. And watching them over the years and the difference that cannabis made in increasing their lifespan, but more importantly, increasing the quality of their life. And many of the stories are about people who were totally healed, who came back from the brink of death because they were using medical marijuana. So the women getting into the cannabis industry came in with their hearts because they were either a medical marijuana refugee or they were the caregivers.
Mm.
And they were out there saying, this works, this works. But when we made that transition into adult sales, it made it a business. And I saw this as our opportunity to get in on the ground floor. Now, obviously, this did not play out the way that I had hoped because with the legalization came the opportunity to make millions. And with that, that brought in people who were not doing it with their hearts. And the women who were trying to start businesses or would put sweat equity into medical marijuana businesses didn't have anything on paper, didn't have, and did not have the capital to move forward and open their own business. Also, oftentimes they had no business experience. So I started the Women's Cannabis Chamber of Commerce because I'd always been involved in Chamber of Commerce's as a serial entrepreneur. I've always owned my own business, mainly because again, I'm not employable. I'm
Count me in on
opinionated.
that one.
I'm opinionated and have attitudes. So there was a need to educate women on, I like to say, claim their power, to move beyond just empowerment. Because empowerment is just those things that, those little notes that we stick on our mirror or on our fridge, the memes that we post on social media. As I said before, you can't take that to the bank. You need to take it to that next step. And there was really a need to teach women how to run businesses and also leadership. Now, the cannabis industry has changed a lot over what is it, 14 years now? And I don't think anyone could have predicted that it would be in 38 states and that it would be such a big business. But every day, new research is coming out. And a lot of that research really is now focused on women's health.
Fantastic. And I just want to point out to our audience that we're going to put lots of links down in the comments because Addison has lots of scientific links and places you can go. Otherwise, we could be on here for quite a few hours going through everything. But it's important that you know that the links are going to be below if you want to find out more about the scientific side, etc., and places to look at. Probably look up those stories as well, Addison, right? That have come through from
Yes.
the ones that you're talking about. And so then the Chamber of Commerce. So with the Chamber of Commerce, with that, because that's basically networking, isn't it? Chamber of Commerce with entrepreneurs and businesses.
Yes. Yes, yes, and no.
Yes and no. Oh, you explain about that for us then, because we need to know more.
Well, obviously it is networking and connecting, but I think you have to have a strategy in doing that. And so to do that, we asked new members to fill out a brief little form saying what they want. Basically, I'm in the business of serving other women's agenda so that I know who I can connect them to within our membership base. But because we are a chamber of commerce, and like all chambers of commerces, we deal with businesses at different levels and also with professional careers. We live in a world of videos. And women, we are not respected at the corporate table. We are not respected as business women. And I think that is true in almost every industry and every business. Our voices are not heard, which is definitely a sign that we have no respect. And we will not be heard if we are not seen. So the Women's Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, we have for 2025, we are more focused on marketing and spotlighting the expertise and the businesses of the women involved. And one of the ways we do this is through Cannabis Clip Notes. We also do have a think tank, but with Cannabis Clip Notes, it's not commercials about their businesses, but it's them sharing their expertise. And oftentimes, this expertise ranges from business to benefits of medical marijuana. It's spotlighting their knowledge.
Fantastic. I love that. And bringing with the spotlights, are you finding that is now starting? Because that obviously takes a while to kick in, but if you've been doing it, we're almost halfway through 2025 now. Don't know when you're listening to this video, but that's where we're at the moment. How much would you say it's changed things by doing those clip notes, Addison?
Oh, much more than I had even imagined. Now, before I was in the Women's Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, and I had gotten into social media marketing, had a company that did social media marketing. But the other thing that I've always done is business development. What business development is really business plans, which is a word that entrepreneurs just cringe at. So I use the term business strategy, developing your business strategy. So putting all of that on paper, no matter how good your research, your business strategy, your marketing research, and your marketing strategy, you don't know until you put it out there.
Got to test.
So I'm going, okay, I think this will work, but that's pretty much it. I think this will work. This should work. So we started these the second week in November, and by the time we reached mid-December, all of the cannabis clip notes, each video had received over 6,000 views. I think got off to a rough start, and a lot of the first ones are extremely authentic. So I didn't know there was someone going, okay, this one will probably do really well, and this one probably not so much because it's a little rough, but it's authentic. They consistently all over that period of time got over 6,000 views. So we are at the point now where the women who have presented the cannabis clip notes can report back on whether or not they worked to create more clients for them. They have been more successful than I could have imagined. And the nice thing about social media is because you can track all the views, but you still cannot track the ROI. So to get the feedback, that's a test. And I encourage all women out there who have businesses, because if you're in business, you also have social media sites. Do a 30-second little video. And there's all kinds of stats on how successful that is on getting your Google rankings and such. Because as women, no matter what business you're in, what industry, whether you're in real estate or retail, you will not be heard until you are seen. And as women, we control most of the consumer spending. And also, and this is human nature, this is why we go to a certain restaurant or a certain pub, because we like the staff there. So putting a video on your social media sites, it makes you personable. It connects you with your client base. That's why you really need to put some energy into them and make sure that they are good ones, because they're out there, but you don't know how far reaching it is.
That's very true. Yeah, just keep on keeping on and keep on testing. And it sounded like the raw and real ones were the ones that did brilliantly, not necessarily the super polished ones. So it's just
Yeah,
starting to do it, right? One of the things I also wanted to ask you about, Addison, was at the moment there seems to be a lot out there around women and menopause. And again, that's something that we kind of go, oh my goodness, my body's taking control of me. But when we spoke before, you were saying that the cannabis can actually help with that, and you're seeing results with that as well. So can you speak to that?
oh, yes. And I do not know why it took so long for this research to get out there. And one of the people who has done a lot of research and has a lot of research on this is Dr. Uma. There's been studies on not only with menopause, but with helping with cramps. And also one that really gets a lot of attention and feedback is one regarding morning sickness. And so starting out with how it affects and helps with the first thing that we have to deal with as females is our periods. And some of those can be very, very intense. So the studies show that cannabis can really lessen the symptoms and particularly the cramping and the pain. Now, this makes sense because we already knew that cannabis can help with pain, and I think just as effective, if not more effective, than prescription medication. Definitely much better than non-prescription things like aspirins and Tylenol. Because I'm sure a lot of women out there have had that experience where they've eaten 6 Tylenol and they're still in bed in pain. So cannabis relieves that pain, but it also relaxes the body and the muscles and makes it easier to function. And then where the morning sickness is so intense and continual that the woman cannot function. So the first time I saw a pregnant woman smoking a joint, my reaction as a cannabis user was I totally freaked out and did not have a positive attitude towards that. And, I asked her about that. And she's the one that opened the door to the studies, to turning me on to studies about cannabis use for severe morning sickness. Now, that was about 6 years ago, and she has a very healthy, smart, normal 5-year-old. So there was no effect. And my other concern was just not the THC factor, although I think just a straight CBD product would work just as well, because people really underestimate the value of CBD for pain or other cannabinoids. I'm concerned about the smoke because in high school I saw the videos on what the smoke does to the fetus. So the studies show that it does not harm the fetus. Now, this is not a recommendation for every pregnant woman out there to go out and smoke cannabis. It should be used in an appropriate situation. And then now the research is finally reached menopause. And maybe that's because so many women have gone into menopause and they're out there with the symptoms of menopause. And personally, I have to tell you, no one told me how bad it was going to be. As a person who's always had a really holistic, healthy lifestyle, I assumed when I reached that part of my life that I would seek herbal solutions to it. Well, none of those worked. And within a week of my first hot flash, I was begging for some type of drugs or relief. Now, the studies have proved that cannabis use, and again, I think that CBD could have the same effects, really lessens the hot flashes, which is huge, also helps stabilizes one's mood. And both of those things are huge,
Mm.
huge. I'm embarrassed to say I was a crazy person for what seemed like years. But I was also, it was during a period of time in my life where I was not using cannabis.
Interesting.
I have not consistently been a cannabis user.
It's fascinating, isn't it? When you think about the changes and you knew what the other benefits were and how you had benefited through that you didn't think, oh, well, maybe that would help that as well. It's not
Well,
normal to just go, oh, yes, that might help something else, right?
well, it was also illegal at that time.
Ah,
And so there was always that paranoia of being busted, going to prison, and losing everything you've worked for.
yeah.
So I think in my social group way back in the day, every woman, when they became pregnant and started to have a family, stopped using cannabis. And they've also done some studies now on mothers who use cannabis, and also fathers too, but on their parenting skills. And those are really interesting because it shows that they are actually better parents than the parents who, or the mothers who have that glass of wine. Because it shows that the cannabis mothers are more engaged with their children and more conscientious. And I can see that because I think you would be more engaged because, because cannabis makes you, I think it makes you curious.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Everyone talks about the stigma about women using cannabis and how we can get rid of that. Well, the way we get rid of that is just to be who we are, just to do the best we can in how we raise our children, how we care for our family, to do the best we can in our careers, just the normal things. It's just to be the best people that we can. And I think right there, that should counteract if we are the same, if we go home or at the end of the day, smoke a bowl.
One thing I want to ask again, if people aren't aware, the difference between smoking cannabis and CBD. What does CBD stand for, and what forms does it come in?
Oh, CBD is one of many cannabinoids, and it is the first CBD is the first that came onto the market. So you see a lot of CBD products. Now, CBD is derived from hemp, although cannabinoids are in cannabis. So you could derive it from cannabis. But I think legally I have to say hemp. Comes from hemp.
Okay.
And hemp has so many uses and was grown here in this country at several different times in history, including during World War I and World War II, because you could make rope out of it. There's hemp fabric and such. So CBD is only one cannabinoid. The one that has come out now and has gained popularity is CBN. It puts you to sleep and it works. So cannabinoids do not have a psychoactive quality to them. They don't get you high. And I'm always amazed about how effective they are. If you take a CBD oil, and you've got to get a good quality one. Here you can buy CBD at Walmart. That doesn't mean that is a good quality. But I'm always amazed when I use a CBD oil for pain, like leg pain, or if you exercise, you get the pain, and it works. And you would think that I'd be over that. So recently I've started to use CBN because I was having sleeping issues, and it's really boring to be up all night long. And again, I'm absolutely 100% amazed how CBN works. They're also coming out with CBG, which gives you energy. And
So are these both in oil forms, CBD? Sorry,
they come in all types of forms.
okay.
So the most popular form for like the CBN is gummies.
Oh, okay.
And I'm just absolutely amazed at how they work. But you can recently when I was having some leg pain, I went through all the little things that I had gotten from attending conferences, and I had some CBD massage oil. And I'm going, okay, I'm going with this because the Tylenol's not working. And I rubbed it on my lower legs, sat there for a few minutes, and the pain was gone. And I'm going like, why don't I do this more often? Like with the CBN, that puts you out in about 30 minutes and you get an 8 hour night sleep without addiction to a sleeping pill and also without that grogginess. But yeah, so cannabinoids, boy, that is a huge topic. So there's a big difference between the cannabinoid products like CBD and THC. So I think this is an area that I'd encourage people to explore because if you can get the same relief from an all natural product that you can from something that is synthetic and has a potential of addicting you. Because I think that's a real concern. And also the side effects of a lot of the prescription medications to be able to take something that doesn't have a side effect.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of people don't read what the side effects are. They just see, well, this is the benefit. And they're like, oh, if my doctor tells me to take it, I'll take it. It's like, well, what are the side effects? Whereas something like this, they're like, oh, you sure? So yeah, it's like, do you want to be in pain and take something that is also going to have those detrimental side effects, or do you want to take something that's going to get you out of that pain and not have those side effects? Well, I know which one I'm going for. That's for sure. This has been fascinating, Addison. It's enlightening. Is there anything that you would like to leave our audience with?
I think I covered everything that I felt was relevant. Maybe just to encourage women to move beyond empowerment. Take that next step. Empowerment is not an action. You need an action step. You need to start looking at your dreams and your passion. I meet brilliant women who have everything they need for success, but they're stuck in working two low-paying jobs just to take care of their family. They don't have access to time. So if you have a dream and the words business plan or business strategy scares you, put your business plan in the form of a vision board. And from there, from that vision board, start to put it into paper form, or these days we don't actually use paper. You put it in a Google Doc out there and start your research and start your plan. And that plan, when you start to do your research, it will open up doors and it will give you the reality of it. Is it feasible?
Mm.
Can you get money for this? Can you do this? But never put your dreams on the back burner. Put them on a vision board.
Love that so much. That's so important. And of course, these days we've also got things like Chat GPT, that will do deep research for you. And you can ask it exactly what you want it to go away and research, and it'll come back like you just paid someone to do it, and it comes back and it gives you all that deep research as to what's out there, will it work, what's your market, and all of those things. This has been wonderful, Addison. Thank you so much. And for our audience, there will be all of the information down below in the description. There will also be another video coming up on screen. So I will see you over there. Have the most awesome day and bye for now.